An undeniable sense of dread is creeping over Las Vegas, a premonition that something catastrophic is on the horizon. And make no mistake, this is the truth. These are no longer whispers of perception. This is a blaring 5-alarm wake-up call. We are far beyond the point of just tourists turning away or the haunting silence in casinos that once roared with life. This isn't about a handful of hotels with vacant rooms or a few bars being forced to shutter their doors before midnight. All those desperate omens have now coalesced into one terrifying, undeniable picture. A vicious new cycle of crisis is actively swallowing Las Vegas, the city once worshipped as a monument to opulence. In the very place where every fantasy was for sale, the city now stands as a brutal mirror to the profound fragility of the American economy. A landscape scarred by mass layoffs, cavernous casinos, and the hollowed-out faces of its people, a spectacle that has become horrifyingly common. In this investigation, we will trace the anatomy of this disaster to expose why the city that never sleeps is now trapped in a waking nightmare of recession. A tidal wave of pink slips is crashing over the entire United States, a brutal, indiscriminate force. It is ripping away hundreds of thousands of livelihoods across every conceivable sector, from the glamour of tourism and tech to the bedrock of major retail chains. According to the job tracking platform Interlick, from the start of the year to just mid-quarter 3 of 2025, a staggering 3,585 companies have officially announced they are slashing jobs, downsizing, or freezing all hiring. This is not just an economic statistic, it's a death knell, heralding a period of profound chaos that is violently reshaping America in the pandemic's aftermath. And the cruelest irony? Las Vegas, the glittering poster child for the American dream, is now ground zero for this economic plague. For more than 3 agonizing years straight, Nevada has been shamefully locked at the top of the list for the highest unemployment in the nation, with a grim average hovering around 5.8%. And Las Vegas, the self-proclaimed capital of entertainment, is now choking on a 6% unemployment rate, earning it the disgraceful distinction of being in the top 3 most jobless major metropolitan areas in the country. You might hear the number 6% and think it sounds manageable, but you would be dangerously, catastrophically wrong. Pause and let that sink in. That 6% represents over 72,000 families stripped of their final lifeline. Breadwinners staring down a mountain of bills, haunted by the question of where their next meal is coming from. It's the sound of children, their innocence shattered, forced to ask their parents if they can even afford for them to stay in school. And it's the quiet terror of the elderly, clutching bottles of life-saving medication, knowing they might not have the money for a refill next month. On a spreadsheet, it's a cold, sterile number, a few percentage points shifting in a column. But in the real world, every single point represents tens of thousands of human tragedies. Tens of thousands of futures extinguished, and tens of thousands of homes falling into a deafening, desperate silence. When these supposedly small numbers collide with reality, they carry an unbearable weight. Because behind every job lost is a person, a mother, a father, a child, whose faith in the hollow promise of America is being systematically destroyed. They sold us a lie. If you work hard, you'll make it. While countless factors fuel this nationwide inferno of joblessness, the story in Las Vegas has a specific toxic origin. Here, the layoff tsunami was born from a fatal sickness in the city's very lifeblood, its tourism industry. This was once a mecca of excess, a beacon of frantic energy, drawing in over 41.7 million souls a year, all chasing that intoxicating myth of go big or go home. But then came the summer of 2025. The season that was supposed to herald a triumphant post-pandemic comeback instead ended with a pathetic, deafening silence. The official narrative, peddled by the press and politicians, is a desperate chant. Vegas isn't dead. But the cold, hard data screams a different, brutal truth. A catastrophic 12% of tourists, a legion of 500,000 people vanished within a single month. ripping a $1.3 billion hole in the local economy. With its financial lifeblood hemorrhaging, the entire gargantuan entertainment machine began to seize and falter. And that is when the facade began to crack wide open. Look at Caesars Entertainment, the city's legacy casino empire now buckling under a crushing $12.3 billion in debt. It has been disgracefully ejected from the S&P 500 index and is watching its international clientele bleed away. We're talking about the Canadian guests, a demographic that notoriously outspends American tourists several times over. Then you have MGM Resorts. In a desperate scramble to stop the bleeding, they've shuttered concierge desks and axed over 800 mid-level management jobs. And what about the glittering new titans once promised as the city's salvation? The Fontainebleau, the Sphere, they have become billion-dollar mausoleums. We're witnessing vacant rooms, mountains of unsold tickets, and revenues in a complete freefall. The lights on these colossal failures are burning bright tonight, illuminating nothing but a spectacular, costly abyss. But behind the glittering facade, a devastating wave of pink slips has just crashed down on hundreds of employees. And this was just the beginning of a catastrophic downward spiral. Each job extinguished on the Strip triggered a devastating chain reaction. A taxi driver starved for fares, a laundry service with silent machines, a kitchen plunging into darkness hours too soon. The entire ecosystem, once thriving on tourism, is now visibly withering away. The rot spread to everyone. The food suppliers with rotting produce, the stagehands with empty theaters, and the small family-run eateries watching their nightly flow of customers vanish into thin air. When the very people who built this city's miracles are cast aside and forgotten, how long can we honestly expect the Strip's dazzling lights to burn before they flicker and die? And it was at this breaking point that the narrative twisted into something far more sinister. Because when the jobs disappear and the casino floors fall silent, Vegas isn't just staring down an economic crisis. It's witnessing the very corruption of its soul. If you want to witness the decay of Las Vegas firsthand, the journey is chillingly short. It begins at the front door, Reid Airport. This was once the Grand Gateway, a bustling portal for tens of millions of souls each year, a chaotic symphony of rolling suitcases and endless queues for rental cars. But now there are just hollow, echoing voids. The numbers from mid-2025 paint a horrifying picture. Passenger volume has plummeted by a staggering 8 to 12% compared to the same period in 2024. International arrivals have been gutted, dropping by over 13%. A brutal blow from Canada, Mexico, and Europe, the very lifeblood that once pulsed through this city's veins. A shell-shocked airport employee confessed, "We haven't seen Vegas this dead since the pandemic." But this suffocating silence wasn't contained to the airport terminals. It crept like a plague down the once glittering boulevards, infecting every hotel, every casino, every vacant room. The occupancy rate for July 2025, a pathetic 76.1%. That's a catastrophic drop of nearly 8% from the previous year, leaving a haunting 23,000 rooms empty every single night. The giants of the Strip, MGM Grand, Caesars Palace, and Mandalay Bay are now reduced to peddling pathetic weekday deals and staycation packages. These aren't just desperate attempts to fill rooms, they're frantic efforts to prop up a belief that is crumbling before our very eyes. The city's economic heart, its gaming revenue, is in a free fall. The Strip's earnings cratered by 6.4% in August 2025 alone. This marks 4 straight months of hemorrhaging cash. Casino foot traffic is down by a disastrous 10 to 15%, but the most alarming signal is the nosedive in slot machine play, the financial engine that once powered the entire mass market. The brutal truth is undeniable. The middle-class Americans, the very backbone of this city's success, are vanishing from the gaming floors. A primary culprit is the relentless scourge of inflation, which has mercilessly priced millions of ordinary families out of the dream of a Vegas Vegas getaway. A trip that once cost a manageable $800 now easily spirals past $1,200 for just the bare essentials of lodging and food. For the middle class and retirees, the very people Vegas was built for, the message is clear. They are staying home, forced into local staycations or seeking refuge in cheaper, less predatory destinations. The lights of Vegas may still burn, but for the millions who once coveted its promise, they now represent an impossible, distant mirage. And this sickness is not just a domestic problem. It has gone global. Crippling exchange rates, bureaucratic visa nightmares, and soaring international airfares have conspired to slash tourist arrivals from Canada by double digits. The same story is unfolding with visitors from Mexico and Europe. Meanwhile, the high rollers are bleeding away, flocking to the siren calls of Macau, Singapore, and Dubai, gleaming new hubs of upscale indulgence. These rivals are newer, fresher, and not weighed down by the tired baggage of the past. Las Vegas, once the undisputed king of luxury and escape, is now being lapped in a race it doesn't even seem to realize it's losing. But the deepest wound isn't found in the cold, hard numbers. It's a gut punch of a realization. Vegas simply isn't fun anymore. This isn't just a rumor. It's a deafening chorus of complaints echoing across every travel review. A predatory system of stacked surcharges, insidious resort fees, and outrageous parking costs is designed to bleed visitors dry before they even place a single bet. The legendary shows are vanishing, the veteran stars are fading away, and iconic temples like the Mirage in Tropicana are being unceremoniously demolished. The so-called Vegas spirit, that sacred promise that anyone could escape reality here, has been grotesquely twisted into a privilege reserved only for the ultra-rich. And the wolves are at the door. The younger generation couldn't care less about dusty slot machines or old-fashioned poker tables. Their wagers are placed online. They engage with live-streamed casinos or chase experiences that are faster, cheaper, and infinitely more authentic. All the while, new titans like Miami and Austin are rising. Nashville and Phoenix are surging, powered by a youth, a dynamism, and a genuine culture that Vegas can no longer fake. After decades of burning so bright, the city is finally facing the terrifying reality of its own burnout. Vegas stands as an exhausted relic, utterly out of step with the very era it once shamelessly defined. But make no mistake, the collapse of Las Vegas is not merely the tragic story of a tourist trap. It is a horrifying mirror reflecting the grim state of America itself, where the promise of liberty and happiness is being suffocated by crushing costs, terrifying instability, and a paralyzing fear of the future. Will the garish lights on the Strip ever be bright enough to mask the encroaching darkness that festers just beneath the surface? And if this city, once hailed as a gleaming monument to the American dream, is now sinking into a mire of silence and cynicism, how many other American towns are already marching silently down that same path of ruin? We just haven't been forced to witness their demise. Yet. They were the very lifeblood of Las Vegas, the ones who ran the hotels, served the tables, toiled behind the stage's facade, or offered those familiar, weary smiles from behind the slot machine counters. These are not the high-rolling adventurers or the detached billionaires who descend upon this city to gamble. They are the middle-class backbone, the people who generated the true, frantic pulse of this manufactured fantasy. But today, they are the very ones being systematically discarded and left for dead. As the neon glow continues to lie about the prosperity on the Strip, thousands of the workers who built this city are fighting a desperate battle just to keep the lights on in their own tiny apartments. According to the damning data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics for September of 2025, the median income for service workers in Nevada has been slashed by a brutal 5.2% year on year, while the cost of living in Las Vegas has skyrocketed by nearly 9%. A crisis fueled by predatory housing, food, and medical prices. A full-time job in the hotel industry, a position that once proudly supported an entire family, now forces a person to juggle 2 or even 3 soul-crushing extra jobs just to afford the rent. Some local surveys paint an even grimmer picture, estimating that over a third of all tourism workers in Clark County are trapped in a state where their income is a cruel joke against their survival. In the neighborhoods surrounding the hollowed-out downtown of Fremont or along Tropicana Street, scores of apartments that once housed hotel staff now sit eerily vacant, as rents exploded by an unforgivable 14% in a single year. According to a Redfin report from 2025, those who can no longer afford to exist here are exiled to desolate, remote areas like Henderson or Pahrump, where costs are lower, but the price is a daily, soul-destroying commute that can stretch up to 2 hours each way. Every single morning, thousands of people are forced to drive across a barren desert to serve a city that has made it painfully clear they no longer belong. All the while, the obscene gap between the working class and the wealthy elite in Vegas widens into a chasm. The casino magnates, the real estate vultures, and the corporate hotel chains are still reporting massive profits, not from a surge in revenue, but because they have ruthlessly gutted their staff and embraced the cold, cheap efficiency of mass automation. Machines are now replacing human beings in the very jobs that were once considered the heart and soul of Vegas. Automated receptionists, sterile check-in kiosks, and robotic room service. These programmed empty smiles are designed to make Vegas appear more modern, but in reality, they have rendered it colder and more soulless than ever before. This isn't just a story about economics. It is a story about the death of dignity and the betrayal of trust. For the countless middle-aged workers who poured 2 or 3 decades of their lives into this city, losing their jobs or having their hours savagely cut is not just a financial catastrophe, it is an assault that shatters their pride and destroys their faith in the fundamental promise that hard work could ever lead to a decent life. Now they are forced to watch the American dream, the Vegas version, wither and die, buried beneath a mountain of unpaid bills. Because a city can never be called prosperous if the very people who keep its heart beating are being bled dry. And perhaps the most critical question isn't about growth charts or revenue figures, but whether Las Vegas can ever hope to find its soul again, now that the same people who performed that miracle are being systematically driven away from it. As the slot machines fall silent and the triumphant sound of winning stops echoing through the halls, Las Vegas is beginning to feel the violent convulsions of what many economists are calling the onset of a true recession. These are no longer scattered warnings. A terrifying, comprehensive picture of collapse is now emerging. Tourism is grinding to a halt, investment is evaporating, commercial real estate is in a free fall, and a wave of jobs is being wiped out in the span of just a few months. This city, once considered the thermometer for America's consumer health, has now become ground zero, revealing an economic body that is burning up with a terminal fever. According to the latest alarming report from the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis for the third quarter of 2025, Nevada's GDP growth has plummeted to a disastrous 1.4%, the most severe collapse since the 2020 pandemic. Retail sales in the Las Vegas Valley have cratered by nearly 9% year on year, while commercial real estate investment has hemorrhaged more than $2.3 billion in the first half of 2025 alone. According to Collier's chilling research data, these numbers are a stark confirmation of what residents have felt in their bones for far too long. The economic engine of Vegas is seizing up. And this time, the breakdown isn't just affecting the city. This is not some localized affliction, it is a contagion sweeping across the entire American West. And make no mistake, the so-called experts are now warning that Vegas is the terrifying epicenter of this expanding shockwave. The state's entire economy is a house of cards, dangerously built upon a service and tourism industry that accounts for over 26% of all jobs. A sector fatally exposed to the slightest tremor in consumer confidence. The very moment American consumers clamped their wallets shut, Vegas was the first to feel the sickening impact. And as the city's engine ground to a halt, the shockwaves crippled the vital supply chains for labor, logistics, and energy in neighboring states like California, Arizona, and Utah, bringing them to their knees. Transportation empires, massive food distributors, and the sprawling event businesses that once gorged themselves on Vegas are now witnessing their orders evaporate, plummeting by a catastrophic 15 to 20%. On the ground, the scars of this decay are more horrifyingly clear than ever. Once thriving shopping malls around the Strip now echo with a ghostly silence, their visitor numbers having plunged by a staggering 17%, while restaurants are shuttering their doors at an alarming rate, up by 11%. Even the mighty event industry, which was paraded as Vegas's last hope after the pandemic, is now slamming the brakes on all future plans, crushed by the unbearable weight of skyrocketing insurance and energy costs. With tens of thousands of lives ruined by unemployment and hundreds of businesses either shrinking or disappearing entirely, experts are whispering a terrifying truth. Las Vegas is reliving the haunting ghost of its 2008 collapse. But this time, there is no real estate bubble to blame. No, this is a bubble of pure, unadulterated trust, and it is bursting violently before our very eyes. The question is, are these desperate measures enough to save a city that has lived for far too long in the blinding light of its own illusions? And if Las Vegas, the very monument to American consumption and excess, is crumbling into recession, how can the rest of America possibly believe it is safe from the economic tsunami that is coming for it? If Las Vegas is the canary in the coal mine for a nationwide recession, then its chilling shadow is now stretching its dark fingers across 3 other states. We are talking about Texas, Florida, and Hawaii. Destinations once revered as the unshakable pillars of the entire national tourism and resort industry. Despite their vast differences in culture and economic makeup, all 3 are now trapped in the same terrifying downward spiral. Prices are exploding, jobs are disappearing, and the tourism industry, the very lifeline for these local economies, is now careening down the exact same disastrous path that Vegas has already blazed. In Texas, the shocking images coming out of the 2025 Texas State Fair have become a grim epitaph for this new era. Hundreds of videos spreading like wildfire on TikTok reveal vast empty fairgrounds and sullen, deserted stalls, while the few visitors who bothered to show up are heard crying out that the prices are an outrageous insult, no longer meant for ordinary people. The official data confirms the nightmare. According to the Texas Workforce Commission, in September of 2025, the unemployment rate in the vital travel and culinary service industry surged to an alarming 5.3%, a devastating 1.2 percentage points higher than the same time last year. A damning report from the Dallas Federal Reserve revealed yet another grim truth. The consumer spending index in the metropolitan area has plummeted by a shocking 7% compared to 2024. All this while consumer debt has exploded at its fastest rate since 2010. An economy that once thrived on the weekend joy of millions of families is now facing a brutal, unforgiving reality. People are no longer willing to pay for what they once considered fun. And down in the southeast, Florida, that symbol of mass tourism and winter paradise, is now shivering through a deeply unnatural cold spell. This isn't a chill in the weather. It's the cold hand of a dying economy. A horrifying report from Visit Florida for the 3rd quarter of 2025 revealed an 11% plunge in international visitors over the same period. The most catastrophic blow came from the Canadian visitor group, the very lifeblood that once fueled up to 30% of all winter tourism spending, which saw a staggering decrease of nearly 15%. As if that weren't enough, the Bureau of Labor Statistics confirms that more than 90,000 temporary jobs in the accommodation and restaurant sectors have been ruthlessly eliminated since May. The cause is a perfect storm of financial pain, not just the impossible cost of airfare and travel insurance, but a deep-seated spending fatigue that is spreading like a plague among the middle class and retirees, who were once the unshakable consumer pillars of the state. Moving to Hawaii, the story has a different flavor. but the results are just as sickening. Still reeling from the horrific scars of the 2023 Maui wildfire disaster, the island's tourism industry had barely begun to recover before it was struck by yet another brutal decline in 2025. The Hawaii Tourism Authority delivered the grim verdict, a 9.6% drop in arrivals in the second quarter of 2025, mostly a result of tourists from Japan and South Korea vanishing into thin air. Two markets that once represented the lifeblood of nearly 40% of all international visitors. Hotel industry revenue cratered by 8.1%, while their operating and property insurance costs exploded by more than 20%. The small businesses that depend on tourism, the local stores, the family restaurants, the transport services, are being snuffed out, one after another. And this is happening in a state that already suffers the highest cost of living in the nation. As a result, many indigenous residents are being forced from their homes, leaving Hawaii on the verge of losing its young workforce and facing a future of cultural and economic ruin. When even the so-called invincible fortresses of tourism, Texas, Florida, and Hawaii, start to mirror the decay in Vegas, are we just witnessing a routine market dip? Or is this the chilling prelude to a new, bleak era where the American resort dream is finally dying? From a distance, Las Vegas puts on a dazzling, defiant show. A glittering mirage pretending that the nightmare never began. Rivers of neon still flood the desert floor. Glass monoliths still pierce the night sky, and the billboards scream promises of endless ecstasy. But beneath this paper-thin veneer of glamour, the very foundations of the city are beginning to fracture, not from a single cataclysmic blow, but from the relentless, creeping pressure of economic rot. Social decay and environmental collapse all conspiring to drag Vegas into its most treacherous state since the great financial meltdown of 2008. And the numbers, according to Moody's Analytics, are screaming a warning. In September of 2025, the city's business confidence index didn't just fall, it plummeted by a staggering 14% year-on-year, while the crucial commercial real estate index crashed by nearly 11%, hitting a gut-wrenching low not seen in almost a decade. It's no wonder investors are now quietly fleeing, desperately moving their capital to so-called safer havens like Texas or Arizona. Even the monumental projects, the gleaming resorts, the sprawling convention centers, the opulent entertainment zones that were hyped as the city's grand post-pandemic revival are now nothing more than ghost projects, shelved indefinitely, as both capital and demand have utterly vanished. This isn't a slowdown, it's a real, terrifying decline, and the economic rot is just the beginning. The social fabric itself is fraying, threatening to detonate. A shocking report from the Nevada Housing Coalition in 2025 reveals that a horrifying 31% of Las Vegas residents are now trapped in a desperate battle to pay their rent or mortgages. That's the highest rate of housing distress in the entire state. Think about this. The average rent for a simple two-bedroom apartment has soared to around $1,370 a month. Yet the median income for the very service workers who keep this city running is a paltry $42,000 a year. This cruel math forces tens of thousands of families to sacrifice more than half of their entire income just to keep a roof over their heads. And when you pile on the crushing weight of skyrocketing medical and insurance costs, countless residents are being forced into a heartbreaking exodus, fleeing the city they call home, an alarming echo of the mass departure from California. But the true cancer lies even deeper, within the city's very economic DNA. For decades, Las Vegas operated on a dangerously simple, almost reckless formula. More tourists equals more money. But what happens when that fragile model finally shatters against its own limits? The terrifying answer is that this city has no plan B, no solid ground to stand on. Its pathetic attempt at a tech industry makes up less than a laughable 3% of Nevada's total GDP, while its manufacturing and education sectors are so underdeveloped they offer absolutely no hope of creating any real economic resilience. This one-trick pony economy, utterly dependent on the whims of tourism and gambling, has left Vegas fatally exposed and more vulnerable than ever to every global shockwave, from spiraling energy prices to the wrath of natural disasters and climate change. But the future remains a terrifying unknown. A city that built its empire on a seductive illusion of light is now being violently forced to find its footing in the cold, hard darkness of reality. Can this city possibly rise from its own ashes one more time? Or are the cracks we see today the catastrophic beginning of the end? A future where its legendary lights are nothing but a faded memory. Right now, Las Vegas is teetering on a razor's edge, caught between the ghost of its own illusion and the brutal possibility of rebirth, between the blinding lights of yesterday and the encroaching darkness of tomorrow. This city, once the very symbol of the impossible dream, is now forced to confront the ultimate, terrifying question: what happens to the miracle when the foundation crumbles to dust? And make no mistake, this is not just Nevada's story. It is a chilling metaphor for all of America. A stark warning that the entire dream of prosperity can be shattered by the smallest crack in trust, in our structures, and in the corrupted balance between human beings and corporate profits. And when that foundation finally gives way, we are all forced to ask, can the lights of Vegas ever truly be switched back on? Or will it just fade into the darkness, like a half-remembered dream? If this warning resonates with you, you must share this video. Unleash your thoughts in the comments because our conversation is the spark that can ignite real change. Don't dare look away. Hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell because you cannot afford to miss the raw, unfiltered truth about an America that is transforming before our very eyes. The alarming evidence presented in this video is meticulously compiled from publicly available sources, damning economic reports, and cold hard statistical data, all for the purpose of critical analysis and information. Every figure and statement is grounded in the information available at the time of this production, a situation that remains dangerously fluid. This is not an attack, a judgment, or an indictment of any single person or entity. Our mission is to shatter the single narrative and force a multidimensional perspective to help you, the viewer, grasp the terrifying reality of our socio-economic landscape, free from any political agenda, spin, or predetermined conclusion.